So government's to order, and the first thing on our agenda is roll call.
Okay. Director Scalamini? Here. Director Stransky?
Here.
Alternate Ignacio?
Here.
Director Similino?
Here.
Director Ranachek?
Here.
Director Krosky?
Here.
CalTrans Director Jackman?
Here.
And Chair Drudy?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, the first thing we do is convene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, and then immediately recess and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. We've now done. Public expression is our next item on the agenda, and members of the public are welcome to comment. Time is limited on matters that are under the council's jurisdiction, and here's your opportunity to speak on items that are not on today's agenda item. Today's agenda. Okay, it looks like everybody's here for agenda items. We'll go to regular calendar, which is consideration of community input regarding the replacement of the Albion River Bridge.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, welcome to an unusual meeting. We usually have other things on the agenda at this point. This item that we're starting off with arose because of public comment that was considered at our August meeting regarding the Albion River Bridge Replacement Project. So this was something, hopefully you've all read the staff report. Took me a long time to, what was that? It took me a long time to go through various reports and things regarding the background. I had been aware of a series of bridge replacements that have been proposed by CalTrans over the last decade, I think, and now they're down to getting to a number of improvement projects on a number of state highway projects on the coast. As I first stated, it was brought by brought forward by public comment. You will see, I think I was thorough enough that there are some either concerns with the whether or not the bridge is obsolete, and then also whether it's structurally sound. My bottom line is that as far as what we have been promoting as a transportation planning agency for probably the last 30 years is that we have this Pacific Coast Bikeway route, and it was designated in 1976 as initially, I think, as the Pacific Bicentennial Bikeway or something like that. And there really haven't been very many improvements to it. So if you go back in all our regional transportation plans over the last 4 decades, and I have been involved with most of those, you'll find there's a consistent message in our plan that you need, if you're going to advertise something and attract people from all over the world to use this, we ought to at least provide them a safe and usable facility, and having some shoulders, particularly on the coast, and removing the constraints of the bridges would be a really good thing to do. And there wasn't, of course, any funding along with the legislature designation of the Pacific Coast Bikeway to do any of that. And so over decades, we've been waiting to see piece by piece small improvements to it. And then there's the California Transportation Commission that doesn't like to have any shoulders over 4 feet wide. So there's always, where the typical bikeway design is usually about, for class 2, is usually 5 feet. So there's compromises all along the way, and very little has been done. Not to say that people haven't been trying. So when it comes to a project that's in the State Highway Operation and Protection Plan, the SHOP program, to which we don't have any jurisdiction or participation in, we are allowed to make comments. I looked at this and said, well, they're finally getting around to doing something about it, because we have a number of plans that we've done and participated in the past, and we've had taken public comments over on the coast in conjunction with bikeway plans and the regional transportation plan itself that says, hey, we want something done with improving the shoulders along Highway 1, and also doing something about the constraints of the bridges where you got less than 4 feet, and sometimes you're pretty much well in the travel lane. So the bottom line is, after looking at all of this and consistency with our efforts and policies for many years, I concluded it would not be consistent with our message to say, well, you shouldn't do anything else other than widen the bridge or replace it if it's incapable of being widened to accommodate this. And I think if you look through some of the things that I looked through, and you would see that, number one, the bridge rail's deficient, and there isn't any way to attach a modern bridge rail that's safe, because one hasn't been crash tested to attach to the type of structure that's already in existence. And one by one, you look at all of these things, and then, more important to me, is you look at the unknowns that were identified. They don't really know the condition of some of those connections between the old wood timbers and it's holding the whole thing together, and they don't know. So the fear of the unknown in looking at all these other things would lead me to conclude and agree with them that probably the bridge needs to be replaced, and needs to be replaced with something that's 50 feet wide, which would accommodate 2 lanes of travel, pedestrian and bicycle use. And that's how you get to 50 feet. And that's just the way it is. So I think it's doing anything other than building the new facility would be inconsistent with our long-term policies for trying to get those improvements on Highway 1. Now, as far as what to do about the existing bridge, I can only offer that it'd also be pretty much inconsistent with the safety and the use of bicycle facilities and pedestrian facilities to utilize the existing bridge, because you'd have to cross the highway twice to get the facilities. Somebody's traveling southbound, if you put it on one side, you'd have to cross the traffic. To get back on the other side, you have to cross it again. And it's already noted in numerous reports that there's also the curvature and the radii of the existing roadway does not meet existing site distance standards to begin with, and that would also be corrected with a new bridge. So you look through my report. That's a brief summary. There's lots of things to look at. There's lots of issues there. My conclusion is that it is obsolete, and we need to do something about it. And you look at the existing bridge, and these reports tell you, well, they can't accommodate the extra width on the existing bridge. So what do? I think you have to replace the bridge, and there's lots of reasons why CalTrans has gone down a route why you need to do that, and some of those I didn't even mention in the report. So I read a lot of stuff. I read a lot of reports that was done by CalTrans, stamped by engineers. I am an engineer by training, and I do understand when somebody stamps it, they put a lot of thought into it, because that license is on the line, and so to me it has a lot of credibility. When I see those saying we looked at this, we see it's deficient, that has some weighting in my mind, and so I'm not going to ramble on forever, because I think I covered everything pretty well in my report, along with some of the attachments that were given to us from the people who presented the argument back in August. And I'll just leave it at that unless there's any questions of the way I worded my report or whether it didn't get across to you very well.
Any questions on the staff report? Okay, not seeing any. Okay. Obviously, we have people here from CalTrans. Rex, I assume there's someone here from CalTrans besides you, or you?
Yes, the project manager for this replacement project is here, Frank Dennery.
Where's Frank?
Here.
Come on up here, take my seat.
Afternoon.
I'm gonna make sure they didn't know I didn't say this.
Okay. So I'm here to answer questions. I think Phil's report is fairly complete, and there is quite a bit of project information available online at the CalTrans project webpage. So if you had any specific questions, I'd be more than happy to take those.
Well, the staff report talks about the alternative analysis that'll be taking place in the next few months. Could you maybe just elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, there's a supplemental VA study. There was a VA study conducted in October of 2013. Since then, there have been quite a few studies completed, and we've had some additional alternatives suggested by the community. We are also going to conduct what's known as a life cycle cost analysis, where we will look at those alternatives that were developed previously, and those have been recommended by not only community members, but some of the other project development team members. Also within the supplemental VA study are certain enhancements that have to do with public access, for example, and what we call context-sensitive solutions, mitigation, etc. So the supplemental VA study itself will go back and look at some of those alternatives that were recommended, reevaluate them, look at some of the enhancements that were suggested as well, and then look at each one of the alternatives, and there will be an expert that will be brought in by the consultant that we've hired, Value Management Strategies, who will do a rigorous life cycle cost analysis for each of the alternatives, and that would include the rehabilitation alternative.
And do you have a rough time frame for that?
The actual supplemental VA study will begin on November 27th and go through December 1st, and it's likely the results will be out in 1 to 2 months. The life cycle cost analysis may take 3 months to complete. We don't have a firm commitment from the consultant on when that information would be released, because there's a lot of data to consider.
Okay. And this will probably come up in some of the public comment, but it does, as someone who does drive Highway 1 pretty often, one of the nice things about Albion is the fact that as you're driving, let's say from the north, and you approach the northern edge of Albion, you have a fairly sharp turn, and then you head south, more or less what feels like directly south, and you sort of dip down a little bit towards the Albion River Inn, and then you have a fairly sharp turn to the right to approach the bridge. And although those twists and turns, I'm sure, don't meet sight standards today, I generally think it probably does cause people to drive a little bit slower than they would if it was, a modern design. So, in any of the alternatives that you're looking at, or the plan that's proposed by CalTrans, what, if anything, are you doing to try to maintain relatively modest vehicle speed in that area?
Well, the actual design of the roadway alignment will be an engineered curve, and we will eliminate what we call the north side Albion Road that goes down to the campground. Rather than have two intersections so close together, the actual intersection for the North Albion River Road will come up to Albion Road. I guess that's Albion Compchi Road, where the connection will be made. So that will eliminate that one location where you have a blind spot as you come around the turn heading south.
Is anything else being done that will either retain or modify the road alignment of Highway 1?
Well, the sight distance will be improved by changing the vertical profile, and the horizontal curves will also be improved to increase the sight distance. And that, again, that information is online. We have advanced planning studies that are posted on our project webpage, and certainly could make that information available to the board.
I'm just curious if there's been any analysis about how that might affect vehicle speed.
We're still in the preliminary stages right now. We haven't gone into the design stage. So at this point, we're conducting preliminary environmental studies for the project alternatives, and we will not begin any design work until September of next year, 2018, once the project has met approval and the environmental document has been signed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from CalTrans? Okay, right. Any other presentation at this point? No, just here to answer questions. Okay. Okay, so we're going to open up to members of the public to comment. Please come up.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Wodetsky, and I've had the pleasure of living on the Mendocino coast for 42 years. I thank you for taking the time to review this Albion River Bridge issue and welcoming our input. First, I want to address Bill Dow's staff report, in which he concluded that MCOG should support CalTrans' preferred alternative of replacing the Albion River Bridge based on, in Phil's words, the existing bridge is functionally obsolete and structurally deficient. While the term functionally obsolete sounds to some people as meaning that the bridge is unsafe and will crumble any day now, here it simply means it does not meet today's ideal design standards and that it lacks pedestrian and bicycle lanes. In fact, there are tens of thousands of functionally obsolete bridges in this country, including the Golden Gate Bridge and most Highway 1 bridges north of Albion. But they are safe and they are functional, and there is no legal requirement that they must be replaced. As far as the Albion River Bridge being structurally deficient, I can understand why Phil, after reading the voluminous CalTrans documents, has come to that conclusion. We locals who've been reviewing CalTrans documents for years now have also been confused by the shifting nature of CalTrans' rationale for replacing the bridge. At CalTrans' first public meeting about the Albion River Bridge, the primary concern voiced by CalTrans was a tsunami might damage the bridge. The scenario being described involved a 1 in 1,000 year tsunami. And even in that unlikely event, CalTrans said the bridge would actually survive. And it might be damaged by debris, but it might be damaged by debris when the water receded back out to the ocean. When the absurdity of this threat became apparent, CalTrans dropped it and instead used the rationale that the wooden deck was crushed and rotted. But later, CalTrans examinations proved that the deck was actually quite sound. So then the rationale was shifted to the connectors. And CalTrans' feasibility study for rehabilitating the existing bridge, written in May of 13, which Phil Dow reviewed, there was a statement that nuts and bolts have historically required replacement every 2 years. The important word, some of the nuts and bolts, was conveniently omitted. In fact, they don't all need replacing. Many of them have been there for decades. Similarly, it has frequently been stated by various CalTrans representatives that the supporting trestle timbers are rotted. Again, the word some was omitted. In fact, the timbers, beautifully shown here, craftsmanship, local materials, built by local people during World War II, they are just, as in the deck previously, they are, for the most part, in very good shape, as CalTrans now documents. As for the bridge's vulnerability to earthquakes, It has a sufficiency rating of 74.8, which is better than most of the bridges in California, including the Golden Gate Bridge. And lastly, at the most recent CalTrans meeting in Albion, there were vague, dark references to environmental dangers associated with arsenic leaching from the bridge timbers that have been standing for 3/4 of a century. There was no discussion of the enormous environmental impact dismantling this bridge would cause, releasing toxins into the environment and generating tons of toxic waste. Nor was there any discussion of the huge volume of greenhouse gases that would be released associated with the construction of a new, vast concrete bridge. This fast checking is all to point out that CalTrans has an agenda to build new bridges. That's their job. And they skew the reports and presentations towards that end. But we should not accept their agenda when it distorts reality and when it would destroy a historical treasure like the Albion River Bridge. As you probably know, there used to be hundreds of wooden trestle bridges up and down the California coast, carrying logs on railroad trestle bridges and wagons and later cars on roadway trestle bridges. Populating the North Coast would not have been possible without these wooden trestle bridges. But where are they today? Alas, only one survives. The Albion River Bridge is the last wooden trestle bridge on the California coast. We owe it to our history to future generations to preserve this final remaining wooden trestle bridge. It is truly worthy of the recent placement on the National Register of Historic Places and on the California Register of Historic Resources. Let me just add, and you know that the historical assets like this bridge, like the Skunk Train, and like Mendocino Village support thousands of us on the coast and, of course, county coffers. So in conclusion, the Albion River Bridge does, with your help, and with your help, will continue to safely fulfill the same purpose it has for 73 years. Please support preserving, not destroying, this historic and perfectly safe treasure. Thank you very much. I sit down.
Okay. Do we have any other public comment on this?
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Wells. I own and operate Albion River Inn, which is affected by this proposed change. We've operated it with my partner Florrie Healy right there. We've operated it for 37 years. We've paid millions and millions of dollars in taxes, and we actually collected millions of dollars for the county, for Mendocino County, from our guests. The Albion Bridge is iconic. It's not just a wooden bridge. It sits there and in the most highly scenic part of Highway 1. And it's fully revealed to my guests, for example, at Albion River Inn. From every room you can see it. And it's iconic. I hear the word obsolete, but I think instead of obsolete, can we call it historic? And aren't most historic buildings and structures to some extent obsolete? The whole situation that made me come here today was that I heard, and there's sort of been rumors, and it's not been accurate, that there's a permit pending for the cutting of 260 trees that abut right up against Albion River Inn, and the creation of a helicopter pad right there to drop heavy equipment right on the most obvious corner of the headlands. Now, taking down all of those trees is going to be a problem. It's going to cause drainage problems. It's probably going to loosen the whole bluff. At Albion River Inn, we support the idea of keeping the bridge, of making it work. Can it be cantilevered pedestrian passage and bike passage, can it be each side of the bridge 4 feet? That doesn't seem to be a lot. That makes a very simple construction job, it seems to me, especially for some company as talented as CalTrans. One other thing I want to say about that, CalTrans has maintained this bridge beautifully. There's been no real damage, no earthquake damage in the 73 years of its life. It's being used every day by logging trucks, by all kinds of traffic. And there appears, even though there's wear and tear, I really believe that CalTrans has the ability, the engineering ability, and the staff and the knowledge to keep this bridge going. It's iconic. The whole area has been termed highly scenic by both the California Coastal Commission. I've attended hearings or had applications before the Coastal Commission 4 times. The primary concern that comes up at each of the hearings is that this is being presented, this area of the coast is being presented to the people of California, and it's a value for the whole state. We want to keep a 2-lane highway. We in Albion and at Albion River Inn, we don't want a lot of heavy traffic. We don't want a lot of speeding cars. I know you brought up the idea that it could be faster. I don't think that's appropriate in a highly scenic area. Right at the middle of this highly scenic area is this incredible bridge that is beautiful to look at. It's iconic in its effect. Our guests are absolutely taken with it. The removal of it would be a disaster, completely. At the moment, this idea that 260 trees are going to be removed and there's a helicopter pad put in right next to Albion River Inn, that is totally unacceptable. I mean, we will obstruct and fight that for years. This is not an ideal situation for Albion River Inn. It would put us out of business for some period of time, I'm sure. So, okay, let me be a little more clear, because obviously we want to preserve that bridge. We want to preserve it for the village of Albion, for the people of Albion, and also for the guests who come up to the coast, who enjoy Albion River Inn and the spectacular scenery. We're, as far as the actual work to be done on the structure, it seems that CalTrans has taken very good care of it. There's been no problems, as I say, no earthquake damage. There's no real reason to destroy it, other than to build a city-type bridge, an urban passageway for cars and trucks. Well, is that appropriate in that area? I don't think so. I think that what this area represents and what the residents of Albion are ex-urbanites. We don't want a big urban bridge 50 feet wide when this is just a 2-lane. Can we cantilever each side of that bridge a short passageway, maybe 4 feet each side, one side going one way, the other side going the other way? Bicycles and pedestrians now risk losing their lives in traveling along Highway 1. It's not been, for 20 years or 25 years, it's been a subject that, yes, CalTrans would provide some kind of bike lane or some kind of pedestrian ability to use Highway 1. It hasn't happened. And even now, even if they were to build the 50-foot wide bridge, the rest of the highway is still a terrible, dangerous situation. So I'm mixing two things. One, there is this plan to do a geological study that would in fact be presupposing approval of the CalTrans plan. Well, there hasn't been a hearing, and there's certainly nothing approved. Why are they spending millions of dollars in preparing all kinds of heavy equipment, wiping out the trees? I think it's backwards. I think that what has to happen is we have the hearing. Let's have the hearing in front of the Coastal Commission that determines whether or not this bridge is to stay. we in Albion and we at Albion River Inn definitely want it to stay. And we're asking for your help, actually. We're asking for you to pay attention to this, perhaps to come to Albion and look at the situation, and to recognize that our business for 37 years has been paying millions and millions and millions of dollars in tax. And even the lodging tax, our guests have paid millions of dollars in lodging tax. I think the Council of Governments has a duty to really respect that. I think we have done our part. We want to keep this ambience, this beautiful ambience that's in that area, and we want it to survive. We don't want a large concrete bridge. There's no guarantee that that would be safe. There's a very notable example in Big Sur, where a concrete bridge was considered safe until it fell or leaked. I don't know what happened exactly, but it's not been used, and the people of Big Sur are unable to use it. Anyway, I'm asking you, as the Council of Governments, to consider our position here as an amazing host of thousands of people who come back again and again to be a part of this ambience, this small strip of Albion and the iconic, historic bridge. Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Did you sign in, sir?
Yes.
Have you,
Yes.
have you signed in?
Yes, I've signed it.
Do we have any other
I would like
comments,
to deal with any
presentations?
questions that anybody has.
Not seeing any right now. Do we have any? We have more comments?
Thank you for being here and allowing me to speak. My name is Warren DeSmit. I've lived in Albion for 41 years. My comments are partly based on a letter by long-term Albion resident Linda Perkins submitted to CalTrans in response to the Notice of Preparation, the NOP, for the Albion River Bridge Replacement Rehabilitation Project in 2015. Linda is the chair of the steering committee, the Albion River Watershed Protection Association, Friends of Salmon Creek, or WAPA. You all have her original letter, which still holds true. Some things have changed since then. I will use abbreviations to save time while I am speaking. I'm also speaking on behalf of many concerned Albion Bridge stewards. Concerns with a potential bridge removal, replacement, and the geotechnical and seismic surveys involve possible impacts on two salmonoid species, coho and steelhead, both of which are found in the Albion River. Both are federally listed as threatened, and coho is state listed as endangered. All three classes of coho are present and are uncontaminated by hatchery stock. These fish are critical to the recovery of coho in Mendocino County and should be considered a genetic refugia. Other aquatic resources include the Albion River estuary's extensive eelgrass beds, that's Zostera marina, that might also be impacted. Eelgrass beds are an important and sensitive estuarine resource for invertebrates, for which it provides a substrate, and for fisheries, including salmonoids, for which it is a critical habitat for foraging, growth, smoltification, and predator escape. Eelgrass serves as a spawning ground for herring. In addition, black brant, a species of migratory geese, feed almost exclusively on eelgrass. Eelgrass is particularly sensitive to elevated suspended sediment concentrations. Any activities associated with the project that may increase sediment levels are to be avoided and reduced to insignificance. The Albion River has the most abundant and healthiest eelgrass on the Mendocino coast. Impacts could also affect bald eagles who have been seen hunting and roosting in Lower Albion in recent years. Ospreys who nest just upriver and hunt over the river and ocean. One dead osprey was found under the eucalyptus trees. and great blue herons who had a colony of 6 to 8 nests for several years on the south side of the Albion, just east of Pacific Union College's field station. A variety of other bird species inhabit both the vegetation and rocks adjacent to the bridge. Listed in the Natural Environment Study are special status wildlife species that potentially could be present in the Biological Study Area, the BSA, including bats, frogs, raptors, and butterflies that might be using the eucalyptus trees for roosting and nesting. Eucalyptus are the preferred trees for overwintering monarchs, who will soon be listed as as a threatened species, A biological assessment needs to be performed of the 260 eucalyptus trees intended to be cut for drill sites 6, 7, and 8 alone to ascertain whether they perform any area-specific habitat functions during the respective avian and butterfly seasons. LUP policy 3.1-2 and 3.2-4, as well as Mendocino County Coastal Zoning Code sections 20.496.020 and 20.532.100 address environmentally sensitive habitat areas. The Albion River is on the EPA's list of water bodies impaired by sediment. The Albion River is designated as a wild and scenic river. In 1978, a multi-agency report found the Albion estuary to be a sensitive area and recommended no further development. CalTrans has separated the Albion Bridge project in a piecemeal fashion from the Salmon Creek Bridge project. Widening of the highway, shoulders and replacement of culverts, grading, and temporary road construction. Section 20.504.015, highly scenic areas of the Certified Coastal Zoning Code, CZC, requires grading and construction to follow the natural contours and prohibits new development that requires grading, cutting, and filling that would significantly and permanently alter or destroy the appearance of natural landforms. Most of these projects are significant in themselves, and in combination with the other 8 local bridges that are listed to be worked on or replaced, have a significant cumulative effect. Let's see, excuse me for losing my place. Anyway, CalTrans considers the effects to be less than significant and therefore submitted a categorical exemption and categorical exclusion determination form and an NOE. All of these projects will involve traffic delays, impacts to wildlife, neighbors, tourists, water quality, noise, etc. An analysis of the acoustic impacts on animals and people that could result from the drilling at the drill sites, seismic explosion testing, and helicopter noise needs to be done. We believe the separation of these projects to be a violation of CEQA. CEQA requires that environmental reports avoid a piecemeal approach by assessing the cumulative effects of all current, past, and reasonably foreseeable probable future projects. The ineffective piecemeal cumulative effects assessment began with the scoping process. The NOP should have invited comments on all these closely related projects. A new scoping process needs to be undertaken with all of the above listed projects open for comment. All these individual projects would create a corridor lending itself to much faster traffic flow than currently exists, and would make entering the highway from a number of side roads more dangerous. It would create a freeway-like look and would be in stark contrast to the slow winding rural character of the highway that currently exists for miles both north and south of Albion. Section 30254, Public Works Facility in the Coastal Act, and the Mendocino County Coastal Element, Chapter 4, the Land Use Plan, Descriptions and policies for 13 planning areas outline what's acceptable for this highly scenic area. We therefore support a no-build alternative that would provide a seismic retrofit for the current Albion River Bridge. We believe that leaving the bridge in place and rehabilitating it is the best option, the one that has the greatest potential for preserving the environmental values of our river and its surroundings, and having the least impact to existing flora and fauna. Rehabilitation will have a shorter timeline than replacement, thus reducing impacts. Rehabilitation will also cause the least disturbance to the bed, banks, and channel of the Albion River. Keeping the historic bridge will help maintain the rural character of our community, shared by other rural communities along our coastline. It will also help maintain the beauty and tranquility that draws visitors to our area and helps support a strong tourist economy. We suggest that the project addresses the need for accommodating pedestrians and bicyclists by modifying the catwalk beneath the bridge, constructing a conveyor cantilevered out over the river attached to the bridge, or build an access by way of the Albion Flats. If a new bridge would be built on the west side of the current bridge, the protected cove at the back of Albion Flat Beach will no longer be a sunny beach. We realized that with SN1 passing, it became all of a sudden possible to list the Salmon Creek Bridge from needing improvements to being replaced. The community was not informed. We are concerned that Frank Demling agreed that Frank Dow's staff report captured the concerns with rehabilitation of the existing bridge that led to the proposal for replacement. This decision has not been shared with the community yet. Neither was a geotechnical and seismic survey shared with the community until a field trip from 7/27/2017. Thank you for your consideration of our comments. We would love to find out how the SHOP program could help in this matter. And we are also asking you to keep the record open until your next meeting, as we are also presenting our findings to other entities. Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak.
Are there any other public comments?
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be before you and talk about Albion River Bridge. My name is Abul Hassan Astani Asl. I go with Hassan Astani. I'm a professor of structural engineering, bridge engineering at UC Berkeley. And let me state that any comment, opinion, data I provide, it's all mine. And the disclaimer is that none of the comments are necessarily agreed by UC Berkeley, and they are all presented independent of UC Berkeley. In fact, this project is not a research project. It was a consulting project for me. And as a consulting project, even I did not use any resources of UC Berkeley, which we should not, in conducting this. So all this study was done by myself in my home office, using my own computer and all electricity, even we go that far. So with that disclaimer made, the way I got involved with this bridge is a local property owner, Mr. John Danhakel, D-A-N-H-A-K-L, contacted me and asked me if I will be interested in looking at two bridges in Albion, which I haven't heard at that time, Salmon Creek and Albion River Bridge. And at that time, he was concerned about Salmon Creek Bridge because it was close to his property and he was feeling that it might disturb his property, disturb him. So I agreed, and the integrity that Mr. Danhakel has, now that we are friends and I know him more, he told me right at the beginning that you do this job, you know what my wish is, but don't do anything other than look at it objectively, as he knows how I do my research, and come up with what are the facts, complete facts, and wherever the chips may fall, let it fall there. And if you find out that, yes, this bridge should be replaced, fine, you've done your job. Then later he asked me actually to help community, asked me to educate community on bridge engineering, and I had to spend first year from 14 to 15 to give them kind of like bridge engineering 101 and tell them what these things are, which was very joyful, and I found so many friends, as they call themselves Albion Nation. So I'm honorary citizen of Albion Nation. But I did my job independent of CalTrans and independent of course, community. It doesn't matter what community feels. You heard their comments already. So let me tell you why I'm here. Actually, I was going to come here, but I decided last minute that I can't. One reason was tomorrow I'm giving a major global talk, broadcast live everywhere, on Millennium Tower that is being sinking and tilting. And I have 10 people working on it, and today you can imagine how much I have to spend. But this morning, I got an email from community members that apparently today you are going to discuss Albion River Bridge, and the report that is coming to you states that this bridge is functionally obsolete, which is correct, and structurally deficient, which is false, and is based on false data, falsified data provided to your group. Now, it looks very dramatic, but that's very serious business. That's why I just put on my respectable clothes, came here, because I had twice taken the oath. Once when I became the citizen of this great nation of us. That was when I became naturalized citizen. Once when I became faculty of UC Berkeley, I had to take oath to protect and first of all, of course, follow the Constitution and laws of the United States, then California. I was just sitting here at 8:30. I thought that I can't sit and work on that Millennium Tower. Whatever happens, happens tomorrow. I have to come here because you are elected official. You accepted me to come to your country and become citizen. You accepted my family. I'm very emotional in this thing. I decided to come here. Don't allow one government agency, and I'm not calling it CalTrans, I'm calling it District 1. I'm going to distinguish because CalTrans has more than 3,000 engineers. I have worked with 200 of them over 30 years. They are very honorable people. This is a problem of few engineers and others, non-engineers, in District 1, that they have falsified data. And based on that falsified data, they have told you this bridge is structurally deficient. Now, let me give you the laws. When in 1967 the civil bridge collapsed and 60-some people died, Congress passed laws that ended up Federal Highway Administration being in charge of bridge inspection. There is something called National Bridge Inspection Standards. That's the law of the land. Every bridge should have, every 2 years, inspection. It's called routine inspection. The job of that routine inspection is to collect, this is done by states, DOTs. All these 800,000 bridges that we have in US by DOT, in this case CalTrans, should inspect these bridges every 2 years. Some, very few every year. Those are deficient. But that routine inspection report, which should be done, should, that's very clear in the law, should include only current, which is you're inspecting it today, and accurate. There are two words, current and accurate. If there is false information inserted into inspection reports, and there are a couple of others I'll mention, that's a federal crime. I'm not a lawyer, but I know, and I will leave it to lawyers, and that's what my final report is moving, to intentionally, especially, put a false statement or data in any inspection report that you are submitting to Federal Highway Administration is a crime. Why? Because Federal Highway Administration National Bridge Inspection Standards states the only documents that can be used in court of law with regard to a bridge are inspection reports, which is starting with routine inspection, fracture critical inspection, and load rating. And there are other inspections that does not apply to this bridge. Only 3 apply to Albion River Bridge. And it states clearly in the standard that no other document can be considered in court of law as the formal document representing the condition of breach. You can imagine that the system is in place. Only takes some irresponsible professionals, as Mr. Dove so correctly said, and I don't blame him that you reported the same false statement that you got to board, because you are PE, I am PE professional engineer, we know what it means. If a professional engineer falsifies data in any place, loses the license, becomes forever out of job. You can't get job. So in this case, what happened is this. Until 2013, so let me tell you about the 3 reports. One is fracture critical report, which basically applies to steel truss. That's the steel truss that over the river in this case. Because of that fracture of that Silver Bridge in 1967, it was fractured because there was crack in the steel structure. The law says that all steel bridges should be checked every 4 years, 3 years for cracks. If you catch the crack early on, we can repair it. If we don't catch, these collapses happen. So in this case, the latest fracture critical report is from headquarters, because that is done by very experts. The district cannot do it. They came and did it in 2014. That's the latest I have. And that says there are no cracks in the steel truss. And that's pretty much going back to 1960s even, that they have done it, and continuously they say that we didn't find any cracks. In fact, in 2014, there was a painting of this bridge. They had to remove all the old paint and repaint it. During that period, there was a very nice, clear, close-up inspection of the cracks, and they didn't find cracks. So we are sure, according to CalTrans reports, that the bridge does not have any cracks. So that's inspection. By the way, all information I'm giving you today is coming from CalTrans's own report. So it's not like my opinion or some speculation or some firm wrote something. No, it's all in the formal reports of CalTrans. There's something else called load rating. That was done in 2010, then revised and updated in 2014, if I remember it right. And that report, which is done on the headquarters, again, with those high-integrity engineers there, it states, but that's a very serious engineer who looks at capacity of bridge. It states all members of bridge have the same capacity as they had when the bridge was built. Does that give you any indication of the state of this bridge? It does to me as a bridge engineer. It means that that's just great. It's amazing, actually. Concrete bridges and steel bridges don't do that. This is great that this concrete bridge, the timber bridge, is able to maintain the same thing as this bridge design. By the way, inside parentheses, do you know what's the oldest bridge in the world that's still under function? 1,100-year-old timber bridge in China. It was not for cars, of course, you can imagine, but it's still used by bikes and pedestrians and others. It hasn't deteriorated. So this notion of rotten, as you heard from the community members, that the deck was rotten, it was not rotten, it was in good condition. So those 2 reports coming from headquarters says that this bridge is in good condition as far as cracks, there's no cracks. Load rating is the same as it was when the bridge started. Then we come to routine inspection report. Routine inspection report is done by district. Until 2013, and then when you do routine inspection report, you have to inspect the bridge, and there are all guidelines. Take guidelines, workshops, classes for engineers how to do it. Very serious, standard business. So you inspect the bridge, and then you basically fill out all those spots. There's very clear points. All of us can understand it. We know stand. So in order to fill out those forms, there is a line that says status. Status means structural status, which means, is it structurally deficient or structurally not deficient? That's a very important word. And that's what is reported to you, that this bridge is structurally deficient. I tell you why it is falsified. Not false, but falsified. The reason is this. If you are going to establish that status, you have to look at condition of 3 parts of bridge. If that picture is here, you have a picture of bridge? The big one, the big one. Can someone hold it, please? Bridges in the National Bridge Inspection Standards are divided into 3 segments. One is called deck, which is the roadway. In this case, of course, we know that the deck is even tested by CalTrans lab, and it's in good condition. That's the deck. The other one is called superstructure, which is this one. These words are specifically defined, these trusses. And the third one is the rest of it underneath, called substructure. So each bridge has 3 components: deck, superstructure, substructure. In this case, what CalTrans or all DOTs do, they rate these 3 segments: deck, superstructure, and substructure. How do you rate? A thick, this much, 2-inch thick guideline is there that you need actually take courses to learn it. And then you go there and see how, based on condition of this element, like this foundation, this pile, this truss, currently, not 10 years ago, currently, what is the rating condition? They go from 0 to 9. There are 9 different ratings. 9 is excellent. Usually it's assigned to new bridges. When they open, they are assigned rating of excellent to deck, excellent to, otherwise you shouldn't have built it, right? So 0 is bridges closed or demolished. Now in between, 8 is very good, coming down from excellent. 7 is good. Now for Albion River Bridge, it's coming down to that falsified word, not false. For Albion River Bridge, the deck rating, I was planning to look at my laptop, but I'll use it from my memory. The deck rating until 2013 inspection report, including the 2013, was from 5 to 7. That's a deck. Even though CalTrans was saying that it's rotten, they couldn't bring the rating below 7. 7 out of 9. That's very good rating. It's almost like 80% good, which is basically good. So it was from 5 to 7. The superstructure was from 6 to 7. The substructure was pretty much 6 or 7, 6 to 7. This is 2013 report given to Federal Highway Administration. It's gone to the National Bridge Inventory database and became the legal document for this bridge. In 2015, CalTrans did another inspection, 2 years later, right? In that inspection, which I had to spend almost 4 months to get through CIPRA. Even to CIPRA, they were giving me all kind of preprints. This was not sand, maybe this was sand, all marked up. And I'm looking at that box on the right side, top 3rd line. I know where it is, status. Some said not structurally deficient, some said structurally deficient. Finally, I got the one that CalTrans stated in the CIPRA document that they gave me, that this is what is submitted to Federal Highway Administration. And of course, I was trying to get the document because this business is very serious business. If I put something in my report that is speculative, I lose my license. I go back to Mr. Doe's statement. That was very correct and very honest and high integrity statement he made. Because at the end of this process, my report coming out, either I will stand and do my professional engineering and do my faculty job, or have to retire, not be able to do my faculty job, and I'm not planning to retire soon, I can assure you. So what took me since 2015 until now, 2 years, which community members thought I'm procrastinating, was not procrastinating. 400 hours I've spent since 2015 to make sure the final report that's coming out, which was going to come out 3 weeks from now, and your meeting came early and I couldn't come, does not have anything that can be impeached in court of law. If they impeach one line of my report saying that, oh, no, that's not right, I will lose my license. I will lose everything. I mean, 69 years of life and 50 years of engineering, I will lose everything. I may even lose my nationality that I've been given with this great country. And I was going not to do it. That's why I jumped in the car. I grabbed a piece of bread and a banana, came here, because it's very important. You, as representative of people, this is government of people by the people. That's why I came to this country from Iran. I could not, this is personal. I'm professional, of course. I cannot see that some engineers tell public that this bridge is this, and then they come to you falsified. So, in fact, this started in 2014 or 15. I saw a letter from CalTrans to California Coastal Commission. The letter was application for permit, because CalTrans has to get permit for this bridge in order to do anything to it. Even asphalt, they have to get permit, because coastal structure. I read that one, and I got the response, not the letter itself. I got the response of Coastal Commission to CalTrans. And Coastal Commission, in that beginning, they are very clever, of course. They want to cover their own back and make sure they state the things correctly in response. They say that you are stating this bridge is structurally deficient and public safety is in danger. So we are going to look into seriously this, that. They didn't say that we're going to cooperate, but they said that we are going to take it seriously because we are saying that this bridge is deficient. At that time, even it was not listed as deficient in the Federal Highway Administration. It was before 2015. So CalTrans wrote a letter to Coastal Commission, which is a government agency, and falsified data that they have. Because they knew they could look at their report that they sent to Federal Highway Administration. Why? Because they want to get permit. This is not acceptable in this country, as far as I know. I'm not a lawyer, but so that actually triggered. Then there was an interview with New York Times. Press in this country is very important, right? New York Times reporter had an interview, and again, Mr. Frank Demeling, who's sitting here as project manager, indicated to press, which is public really in this country. Press brought the president down in this country. Press is very important. Indicated to press that this bridge is structurally deficient, which was not at that time. Even it was not listed as falsely as structurally deficient. So what are we now? CalTrans has falsified, in my opinion, and that's what I'm going to do. In my opinion, as the lawyers say, without any reasonable doubt. That's where I'm at now. And the reason I didn't release the report last year or this year is because I want to make sure it's not without any reasonable doubt, It is because I want to make sure the report is 100% fact, using CalTrans' own information, showing that CalTrans falsified results knowingly to get this bridge replaced. And if you ask me why, I will give my opinion later. That's not technical engineering data. That's my opinion that I've observed why CalTrans District 1 wanted to do this. So if you like, I would like to come back when my report is ready and spend as much time as you want me to spend. I will drive and definitely provide you with anything you like, any information you like, answer your questions. But what I like to plead with you is that please wait without you decide anything. And I like to really commend Mr. Doe. Honestly, I know you had no choice but other than taking CalTrans report, as he stated so correctly, that when a report comes to you stamped, I accept it. If you send me anything stamped, no question about it. But because I knew that it's not structure deficient and I saw that this falsification has happened, I had to come here. But I will be happy to work with you as my report gets to final stage, as soon as I get CalTrans CIPRAs that I have filed given to me, because they are not given very happily. But that's what has to happen. The system works.
So I do have a question. I may not have followed everything you said. So you said that you have seen the 2013 report.
Of course, I have all of that.
I'm not clear. Did you say you've seen the 2015 report?
Yes, of course. Finally, I got it. See, I have in my final report I have the routine inspect. See, bridges have something called BIRIS. That's Bridge Inspection Report. This document, which is public. Anyone can ask for it, and you can get it. This report has all the documents about the bridge since it was constructed. The bridge for Albion River Bridge goes back to 48. I have all the inspection reports since 1948. In those days, it was not as standard as us, but since 1968, it's very standard. National Bridge Inspection standards came to be. So I have reviewed 150 documents. So it is available, and it shows, I have a plot that shows, I plotted from 2001, 2015. Actually, I have it in my laptop. I can show the committee. The plot shows it is all bars go to 7, 7, 7, 7. And then 2015, okay, maybe I missed that point. I appreciate what you are thinking. Yeah, I should have clarified what happened. After you go to evaluate the 3 parts of bridge, the deck, the superstructure, and substructures, if rating of any of those 3 becomes 4 or less, then the bridge is declared structurally deficient. It's a very simple formula. So what was going on was, until 2013, the rating for all 3 segments, deck, superstructure, and substructure, was either 5, 6, 7. It wasn't less than 4. In 2015, this deck is fine, it's still 7. Superstructure is still 7. Substructure dropped from 7 to 3. Now you tell me how, in a matter of 2 years, and community, of course, was watching this bridge. I've been there many times for inspection. How, in a matter of 2 years, a bridge that hasn't changed much, no earthquake, no damage, no car accident, no flood, goes from rating of 7 out of 9, good, to 3 out of 9, which is serious, which means this is seriously deficient, and you have to just either replace it or remove it. So I missed that, and I apologize. I think I didn't say that. The falsification was that the professional engineer who signed the routine inspection report chose to put there 3, where it was 7 before in 2013. The box that says condition rating of substructures for Albion River Bridge. If you compare these 2 forms, one says 7, one says 3. How? How can you go from condition good, 7 out of 9, to 3 out of 9? The reason was they made a factor of safety. In fact, I would just put 4 if I want to falsify, because 4 would do it, make it structurally deficient. They went to 3 to make sure there is no doubt. Then I asked CIPRAS for, give me the background. I mean, you can't just put number there. You have to have a background to prove. There is no background. They say that the bolts are, as one community member mentioned, the bolts are replaced every 2 years. No. I saw bolts on that bridge that are from 1948, as correctly mentioned by the community member. So this looks very strange, right? That's why I came here. I had a duty to come, and as I said, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Still, I'm shocked, in a way, that a professional will do it. But my plea to you is, please, let me finish my report. Federal administration is alerted, they're waiting. Everything is going to be processed the way it has to be, which is they have to review it, they have to find out why CalTrans did this. And at the end of the day, my attempt to come here was make sure the elected officials, the honorable supervisors, don't get falsified information from a government agency.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions?
Can I add one more thing? My report will show that there are altogether throughout the years, there are 15 or 16 special things that CalTrans has said, because of this, we have to change the bridge, like guardrail, pedestrian walkway, this, that, tsunami one mentioned. I've shown in my report, using only CalTrans' own documents, that all of them are false. Not intentionally. The only intentional falsehood is this structure deficient issue. they're just throwing out these things. Oh, it's going to be collapsing in tsunami, and of course, it's coming from a professional engineer stamp, and your executive director has to accept it as he did. I'm really trying to make sure that I'm not blaming you, Mr. Doe, because I have a lot of respect. I went to your websites and I saw how much you have served public. I told you that at the beginning. I didn't know you. I have never met you. I've never heard of your name. But when you made that statement, it affected me, because I know it's exactly what I would say, that when I get a report from a registered professional engineer, I accept it completely as a gold-plated, gold data. You don't question it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any other public comment? Okay, take it back to the board. There were a number of comments. I think CalTrans, you know, if I were you, I'd want to respond to that.
Yes, I would like to respond. Those are very serious allegations, Dr. Rastani, and I look forward to your report in 3 weeks to see just how you justify those. I want to start with some comments that were first made about the district performing the inspection. That's incorrect. That would be Headquarters Structures Maintenance and Investigation that performs those inspections every 2 years. And while tsunamis are considered when designing bridges, they're not the only aspect in this case. There was also some mention that CalTrans made statements that the deck was rotten. In the bridge inspection report, the actual language said that the condition of the deck with the cracking and the raveling indicated that the deck had reached its end of life and could possibly need to be replaced. CalTrans, in its due diligence, had maintenance go out and obtain some core samples. At that time, we determined that, in fact, the bridge deck was in relatively good condition and only needed to be resurfaced. That work was done last October. Also, the claim was made that every 2 years, CalTrans says 3,000 to 5,000 bolts need to be replaced. Every 3 to 5 years, up to 3,000 bolts need to be replaced. In 2016, there was 816 bolts replaced by a contractor. CalTrans District 1 bridge maintenance can no longer provide the support necessary to maintain the structure. It's not sustainable. That work has to go out to bid from here on out. There were a number of rotten timbers in this last construction contract that were repaired. That number of timbers does increase by every 2 years once we have the biannual inspection. There are work recommendations provided by Structures Maintenance and Investigation, and that not only includes repair of rotten timbers, but the spalling on the concrete towers and replacement of the actual bolts. The other item that was mentioned was that CalTrans was somehow trying to scare the public with regards to the arsenic that's leaching into the environment. The timbers were old-growth Doug fir that came out of Oregon, and back in 1944, the method of treatment for that type of timber was called the Woolman method, and that was impregnating the timbers with arsenic and chromium. Of course, that method is no longer used because it's not environmentally safe. In our standard environmental review, we performed what's known as a preliminary site investigation, and we determined from core samples that the amount of arsenic in the timbers was significant. We worked with the Department of Toxic Substances Control to develop a preliminary endangerment assessment, and our consultant, Geocon, who actually performed the study in conjunction with the DTSC. And those results are actually posted online, and the levels of arsenic around the bridge towers is significant, but it drops off 2 to 3 feet from the pedestals. Right now, DTSC, along with CalTrans, is looking at what the best way to protect the public in this instance might be. That may include fencing around the timbers or the towers. The cost of maintaining the structure is just not sustainable, and at this point, CalTrans is looking at the rehabilitation of the bridge as one of the alternatives. We're far from having any preferred alternative selected. We have 2 rehabilitation alternatives, one to widen the existing structure as Mr. Wadetsky suggested, that would include sufficient shoulder width for pedestrians and bikes. But it's still not known whether or not a bridge rail that would pass current federal standards could actually be constructed. Some of the other information provided today had to do with the number of trees. 260 trees is not entirely accurate. There's approximately 155 trees, but of those trees, 55 have multiple stumps. So if you were to count the sprouts, yes, there would be 260. There will be no helicopter pad built at the Albion River Bridge. What's being developed at the north end of the bridge, west of the highway, is an area for staging to bring in flatbed trucks with drill rigs and cranes to lower in drill rigs to actually do the subsurface investigation. That's standard as part of any bridge design to determine what the subsurface conditions are, so you can actually come up with what the cost of any one of these alternatives might be. That's an important part of determining which alternative would be selected as the preferred alternative. There will be an alternatives analysis done for each of the alternatives. Some of the other information that was provided by Mr. DeSmit, I'm at a loss, why he would think that there would be impacts to salmonoids. The seismic refraction survey that's being proposed is not going to be using explosives. It uses a steel plate with a line that's drawn down with sensors, and then with that steel plate you bang it with a hammer. You've got a computer at the other end, and you get the seismic refraction data. No explosives will be used. How this work would affect the eelgrass, I'm not sure. I'm not sure of Mr. DeSmit's background, but at this point we don't foresee any impacts to the eelgrass from the geotechnical investigation. As far as the bluff stability and the fact that there's some concern that removal of the trees and grading could adversely affect the coastal bluff stability, it's incorrect. I'm not a geotech engineer, but in talking to our geotech engineer, he contends that it will improve the stability by removing the load and also changing the drainage, which will come back towards the road at 2% and then down to a drainage facility. So a lot of this information that's been presented today, not just by Mr. Wadetsky and Mr. DeSmit, but by Mr. Astani, is inaccurate. And again, I think that these allegations made by Mr. Astani that there was intent to falsify records is serious. And I look forward to this final report that Mr. Astani says that he'll present in 3 weeks. I'm sure my colleagues at CalTrans will be very interested to read that.
I didn't say it will be presented in 2 weeks. When CalTrans provides me with information I requested,
We've provided, excuse me, all the information that you requested under a CPR request has been provided multiple times. You made, just earlier in your presentation, that in 3 weeks you would have your final report. That's what I heard.
But that doesn't mean that I'm going, in fact, it's not.
Well,
going to
excuse
come-
me, we're having a meeting of the board at this point.
Again, I think these are serious allegations. I will add that many of the engineers in CalTrans who work in headquarters in structures maintenance and in design actually took structural engineering from Mr. Astani. And I have to tell you that he has a lot of respect from many of my colleagues, but they disagree with his conclusions here. And we do appreciate his getting involved, and we look forward to any information that he might provide that might be helpful. But at this point, it's entirely speculation. We've not seen anything from Dr. Astani that would suggest that any of my colleagues has presented any information that could be considered falsified. Those are serious allegations. That's all I have to say.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just had a question with regards to the rating going from 7 to 3 and us now saying that it is no longer sufficient. Do you have the reasons for what is behind that? Or, I mean, perhaps that isn't the right
I don't
rating.
know if it's
but I'm
gone
just curious
from-
on the
right.
reasons we're currently saying that this is.
I don't know if it's gone from 7 to 3. I'll have to look
Okay.
at that. This is the first I've heard of that, but I will tell you that the structural deficiency rating does change based on the repairs. So when every 2 years, when structures maintenance investigation goes in, performs the inspection, they provide a work recommendation to the district. We let a contract. From here on out, we used to have District 1 bridge maintenance do that work, but again, and we can no longer do that because the amount of repairs that's involved. That rating will change. As the repairs are made, District 1 works with Headquarters Structures Maintenance Investigation. The information that Structures Maintenance uses based on the repair work that's done is what they calculate the structural sufficiency rating. And that does change. So the degree of whether or not it's structurally deficient will change based on how the repairs were made and when they were made. So you may have an increase in the structural integrity of the bridge after repairs are made, but over time, especially with those bolts that are westward facing and basically are being pounded by the elements of salt air and begin to degrade, then the rating begins to drop again. Then repairs are made and it increases. So it changes as repairs are made and time goes on, but it's, again, goes back to sustainability. CalTrans cannot continue to pour the kind of money into this bridge based on the limited lifespan it has remaining. The timbers are estimated to last possibly 20 years. I think that's anybody's guess. But I can tell you from the bridge inspection reports, the amount of rot from the checks and splits in the wood have increased. The cost to repair this bridge is beginning to increase. So it's no longer sustainable, and the recommendation from Structures Maintenance Investigation is to replace it, and has been since 1999.
So as far as the actual reasons, though, that it's been rated, is that the bolts? Is it the timbers? Is it a combination? Are there
It's
other
the
things that haven't
combination
been
of the
discussed?
bolts, the timbers, all the hardware, the deck. It's a combination. I'm not a bridge engineer. That information is in the bridge inspection report. And again, the District 1 project webpage has just a lot of information that you folks might find helpful, that Dr. Astani has referred to. And again, we've provided information to Dr. Astani on multiple occasions on request. So he does have the information needed to provide this final report. And again, I look forward to seeing that in 3 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Have you received information from him in the past?
Dr. Astani,
Currently based on the determination of what CalTrans has decided?
no, we have not received any engineering reports from Dr. Astani of any nature.
Okay, because that kind of bothers me, because you just said that the engineers at CalTrans strongly agree with his findings.
I did not say that.
I think you said that the people at CalTrans disagree strongly with what he provided.
Oh, they disagree with,
Yeah. So
Dr.
I-
Astani produced what would be considered more of an opinion piece probably 3 years ago, where he made some claims on the integrity of the bridge, and he's also made a number of comments in the press, in the newspaper, and in public. And we've had our bridge engineers present at those meetings, and they disagree with some of the claims that he's made. That's correct.
Okay, so so you do know about what he's talking about. My next question is, besides the cost of money, what are the 3 things that really scare you guys about that Albion Bridge?
I would say it's the condition of the internal shearing connectors. We have no way of inspecting those. That's a bother. It's also the arsenic. It's also potential seismic event that could damage that to where it would basically, you would lose that vital link in Highway 1. The ongoing maintenance costs that continue to increase, not being sustainable.
I'm glad you brought up the arsenic. When the arsenic testing was done, were there other control sample areas tested outside of the area under the
Were
bridge?
there
Because
background-
arsenic is naturally occurring in our
Yes.
rivers.
Yes, there were background tests made, and that information is in the preliminary site investigation, which is posted online on the project webpage. And if you look at the preliminary site investigation as well as the preliminary endangerment assessment, the information clearly shows that the source of the arsenic is from the timbers.
Now, my last question is, are there any other wooden bridges in California in operation right now, or is this the last one in the entire state?
That I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Comments? Go ahead.
A couple of questions I have, but I'm not sure they're aimed directly at what's been discussed, because I want to clarify what our role is here and what the possibilities are for this body versus all the technical stuff that's gone by, which I'm not sure is relevant to us. So, when is a public hearing on whether or not to build this bridge before the body that is responsible? When is that supposed to happen?
The draft environmental document is due to be circulated.
What department?
The draft environmental document is due to be circulated in September of 2018.
Okay.
And comments will be opened at that time.
Okay, and at that time, I assume some of the economic impacts that one of the speakers from the public brought up would be included in that?
There will be not only a community impact assessment, but a cumulative impact assessment or cumulative impact analysis.
Okay. But that process of the EIR is already underway then?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. And then aimed at the bigger picture of this body, I mean, is one of the options for us a resolution that we'd rather see CalTrans, we'd possibly rather see CalTrans spend their money on road improvements on Highway 1, which my guess is going to be that we have more accidents and problems with bicycles and such on the road than we do on the bridge. A whole lot more road than bridge out there. So is that in our purview, and is that something that we can consider? And whether the answer is yes or no, what is in our purview here? What exactly are the options for us as this body?
Well, so I think I want to follow up on a question that was asked about the permit. So the environmental impact statement is something that's, I believe, managed by CalTrans directly, right? So
that is correct.
But in terms of permits, the Coastal Commission, I assume, would be voting on a permit at least for the portion that crosses the state river?
That's correct. That would be a consolidated permit more than likely. The Coastal Commission has jurisdiction over the bridge, but the roadway portion is within the Mendocino County's jurisdiction, so it would be a consolidated permit. We also have a separate permit that we would be pursuing for the geotechnical investigation. Right now, that permit is still pending.
So those permit applications would be going to public hearing if the environmental impact statement is scheduled for September 18. I'm just going to guess we're talking sometime in 2019 that the coastal development permits would be sought.
That's correct. Early 2019.
It would have to be after the EIS.
It would be after the PNED, which is the project approval and final environmental document. That is scheduled for August of 2019, and then we would be submitting permits at that time.
Okay. We've had public comment.
But that's not correct. We came here.
Mr. Chairman, what section of the agenda are we actually on at this point, please?
Item 5, I believe.
5?
I believe it's 5.
That timetable is not correct with regard to the geotechnical investigation. That is a separate project, and it's why we are here today.
Okay, so we are on consideration of community input regarding the replacement of the Albion River Bridge. So it's up to this board to decide what they want to do.
If you'd like, I could speak to the geotechnical investigation in more detail, if you'd like.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, the geotechnical investigation right now would likely not be heard by the Coastal Commission until June of next year. We do not have the necessary access rights to proceed with the investigation. Until we have that, we cannot get our application deemed complete. It would probably take 4 to 6 months before the staff report would be released and we would be placed on the agenda for the Coastal Commission hearing. We do recognize, because of the community's interest, we would schedule that with the Coastal Commission staff for the most likely the June meeting, which is would occur on the North Coast.
Okay. So
let me clarify that. So the scope of what we're addressing today is strictly an opinion, if any, on the geotechnical investigation, not on whether we want a bridge or replace versus money spent somewhere else in this county by CalTrans? Is this?
I think if you look through the recommendation alternatives to this, I mean, I think we're trying to decide if this is enough to serve public interest, or if we want to do one of the alternatives, such as including this testimony in the environmental record. Is that correct, Chair?
Right. We're seeing a confirmation from staff, yeah.
That's it, and, you know, and you may direct staff to anything else. Based on the allegations that I've heard, and I tried to couch my staff report to say, this isn't really under our purview. We don't have any financial stake in this. It's a separate SHOP program. We have the ability to comment on it on occasion when it's developed, and we historically have not done that because we've had other things to do. Having had other things to do, particularly with Senate Bill number 1, that I've been spending a lot of time on, and that this is not under our purview. We had this meeting as a courtesy to the people who showed up thinking that they hadn't been heard, and I would like to double down on my recommendation. This is this is a serious allegation that's been made here today. I don't want to spend any time in court.
My thought to that is the issue of the allegations and the possibility of court and such. Is that our issue, or is that an issue for another venue in another body where those allegations would be considered, other than ours?
I don't think it's our issue.
Okay, so and then the report that's due out in 3 weeks, or this information would be dealt with by some other body. I'm not sure which, but.
Well, my issue is I spent hours and hours researching and developing my staff report as a courtesy to those people who showed up. You all heard what was said today. I told you it was going to be an unusual meeting, and I prepared you for that. And I think the Regional Transportation Planning Agency has done a service to the public by having these things come out today. They are a matter of the public record, and I would recommend we end it.
Okay, I have a couple of other comments. And number one, I'd still like to consider the idea of a resolution, not necessarily today, but at some point, that what's preferable for the county. Do we care more about the bridge, or do we care more about safety on Highway 1? Number two, one of the claims that sticks in my mind is the claim of unsustainability. So I haven't seen any figures about that. But if I may add something, a slight bit of perhaps comedy, is that I do know of a structure that comes to mind that is serviced, repaired every year. It's well known that a lot of timber needs replaced every year, and they do it, and they have no intention to stop doing it. It's called the Big Dipper, the Santa Cruz Beach and Boardwalk. But it's the big structure many of you recognize, and it's a wood structure that they just maintain every year. So I don't want to doubt claims about sustainability, but I'd like to see figures before I drew any opinion on that. And, well, I'll just stop there for now. I'd like to consider the idea of a resolution if that's something appropriate, but
If I could
I don't know how to
add one
proceed
more
on
thing. Yeah, that is part of the life cycle cost analysis, and the value analysis team with our consultant value management strategies will be looking at each alternative, and that does include the rehab alternatives for life cycle costs, and that would be one of the determining factors in selecting the preferred alternative.
And to recap, when is the life cycle cost analysis expected to be released?
We do not have a firm commitment from the consultant, but most likely up 3 months following the supplemental VA study and the life cycle cost analysis, which would be November 27th through December 1st. So realistically, you could probably look for something around March of 2018.
Okay, thank you.
that's well before any consideration of the draft EIR then.
That is correct, sir.
Quite a few months. Phil, you said the words that scare me the most. How does this body end up in court over this?
Who knows? All I know is I spent a lot of time on this already and diverting my attention to things that we have in our venue that we have control over. And I'm not sure this is our fight.
I agree. It concerns me though if there is possibility of liability.
I don't
in the
think we
future.
have any liability at all. I'll just leave it at that. I don't see why we would. It's just spending more time on an issue that is not ours.
May I ask if it's worth someone asking for an opinion from county council on the issue, since that is the body that represents us legally, is it not?
Well, anytime the Mendocino Council of Governments asks for a legal opinion, it pays for the legal opinion. So
I'm sorry, it what?
it pays for legal
Oh,
opinion.
it pays for it.
Yeah. Just as
Yes, we
CBI
do.
pays for legal opinions. Yeah. Any other comments from board members? Go ahead.
I just have one last comment. At the South Deal meeting earlier this week, they discussed the fencing around the piers, and they said they're looking at that not to be an option, instead finding a way to not crowd the beach with fencing and instead seal it. And I just really appreciate that. I think, the campground will really appreciate that. It'll be much, if they can go that route. I just want to, put my support behind that. I realize it's a little bit off topic of what we're discussing, but I just, I like CalTrans looking at an option that's going to leave that beach open. So thank you.
If I could respond to that real quickly. Yeah, the risk is if you look at the timbers, you'll see all types of graffiti by children. There are children that climb on those timbers. Those timbers are laced with arsenic. It's dangerous. 3 feet from the pedestals, you have elevated levels of arsenic. Arsenic is very dangerous to children. The state's concerned. We're looking at other options to fencing. We're not sure what all the options available to us right now are, but we are looking at some of those options. But this is serious, and I encourage you to go online and look at the preliminary endangerment assessment and preliminary site investigation. It will provide much information I think you're looking for. Thank you.
May I follow up on that? I'm confused about the difference between two issues here. The soil within 3 feet of the piers, I assume is what you're talking about, and then the substructure that is mounted on the piers. It seems like it'd be easier to fence one than the other, and why isn't simply soil removal and such be part of the possibilities, and then you could fence the actual structure itself? It'd be easier to do so.
During rain events, the arsenic is leaching from the timbers and goes into the surrounding sand around the pedestals. So even if you clean out
Okay,
the
so-
sand, you'll have a recurring event every winter. The arsenic will continue to leach from the timbers into the soil.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Does the board want to direct staff to do anything at this point?
Well, I would like an opinion from staff and from the board members. I mean, is the relative cost or money being put into this project better spent? Do we think it's better spent on highway safety on Highway 1? I'd like some
Go
input
ahead.
on that.
We do have a number of safety projects along Highway 1, bridge projects. We have 8 bridge projects total, some shoulder widening projects, safety projects. I can provide this council with a list of those projects if they do choose, if you'd like.
Can I get clarification on your question? Are you saying the money that this board is in charge of, or the money that the state's in charge of?
Well, both, if they're both within the purview here, but my understanding is that we're talking about state money in this particular case, although if we look at an alternative of money spent on the roadways, then some of our local money is involved in that, I think. That is my understanding. Or it's money coming from the state spent by the county.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
there's some difference there, okay. But the generic question, big picture question, would we, as representing Mendocino County, rather see more money spent on roadway improvements or more than is already in the plan? Is that preferable to us than this bridge project? That's something I imagine we have a right to opine on, and I'd like to have that considered somehow.
The SHOP program under which the bridges are going to be reviewed and considered for replacement is both bridges and highways. That's correct, and it's all in a state program. They have a 10-year program of project for SHOP projects. It's reviewed every how many years? 2 or 5?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years, and some drop off and others are replaced. And so there is a silo of funds specifically for this particular program that does not involve our local funds.
Okay, but
Entirely state funds, but I know what your direction is. Would you rather have them spend it on highways in this county rather than bridges? Well, the
for
bridges
example-
are going to be competing with bridges everywhere else in the state, as well as highways are going to be competing with highways everywhere else in the state. So
okay, so
you can't guarantee that it's going to wind up here in Mendocino County.
I can imagine how complex it would be to or even the question is, is it even doable, considerable in a state organization as big as CalTrans? I don't know the answer. I can imagine it'd be difficult, but I mean, my thoughts about this whole issue, when I look at the big picture, would I rather see money spent on the bridge, or would I rather see safety improvements? What are our accident statistics for on the bridge versus on the road? I mean, my guess would be that there are a lot more on the road, but I don't know that. But a consideration of this is what I'd like to see some effort put into, so that we can develop some opinion, if we wish, or consider, a resolution or something that says to the state body here, we'd rather see money spent on something else.
So I'm going to try to form some consensus here if we can. So we've had an informative presentation. We've had members of the public bring forward some interesting information, as well as from CalTrans. At this point, it seems to me we're at a juncture where we're waiting for some reports to come out, alternatives, feasibility, et cetera. It seems to me that what we could agree possibly on is that we will wait and see some of those upcoming reports. And if there are, let's say, 2 board members who want to see that information presented to the full board for an agendized item for a possible letter from the board, we could do that. But I think short of 2 board members wanting that back on the agenda because of the new information revealed from the report, then I mean, there are other entities that are making permit hearings on this, not us. So that's just one possible scenario. I'm just tossing it out there. Does anybody have an alternative to that, or I mean, I feel like we've had an informational presentation. Do we want to leave the door open to a possible letter, or we wanted to say, well, we've had our presentation and that's it, and we're not going to put this on the agenda again? So it seems those are sort of the 2 options. I don't feel like we have enough information to send a letter today based on what we've heard.
I certainly agree, but I certainly like to reconsider it. I mean, I'll do a motion that says let's reconsider the idea of some resolution or some recommendation to the permitting bodies at a month or 2 down the road, after we've had some time to digest some of this new information.
Well, the way I wanted
we
to,
expect.
I'm suggesting is if there are 2 board members having seen the new information, feel that
Okay.
there's enough of a reason to put this back on the agenda. Am I seeing any consensus on that point?
Are you asking for 2 members that'll do
Well,
this?
based on information coming out at the time, nobody knows what that information is gonna be at this point. So,
So who should the two members be?
well, it'd be any two members of the board, would be my suggestion, but,
Okay, so you have one volunteer here.
well, no. You can't volunteer for something you don't know yet.
Well, who's gonna look it over?
Well, anybody can look it over, but anyway, that's just my suggestion.
I would suggest that we table this till next meeting. It'll have a chance for this report to come out in 3 weeks. And,
Well, my understanding is that,
what's the timeline constraint?
I was thinking we were waiting for the alternatives report, which is a few months away.
Oh, is it a few months?
You're referring to the supplemental value analysis study and the life cycle cost analysis? And that's scheduled for November 27th through December 1st. The results probably 3 weeks for the supplemental VA study, but the life cycle cost analysis could be 3 months, so probably March of 2018 would be the earliest that you would see the life cycle cost analysis released.
So it might be our April board meeting. So,
Let me toss out one other idea. We could table this until the public asks us to look at this again, because they'll be looking at these reports. Some of them being here, and we'll certainly be notified if they have concerns at that time frame. That is another option.
Well, the option and recommendation from staff, and please correct me, is that there is no action on this particular presentation, and that's okay too.
that is okay too. I'm just putting it out there that maybe we might want to hold off on taking a final action until we've seen
Right.
the additional information.
I agree with that, with what you said.
So the earliest would be in April that it would come back on our board
Mhm.
agenda. Is there any consensus or agreement on that?
I agree.
Fine with me?
Okay, well, I'm seeing,
I move that we accept no action on this at
Okay.
this time.
is there a second to that motion?
Yeah, second.
Okay, the motion is that there's no action at this time.
Yeah. I fully expect to hear from the public as things develop over
Mhm.
the coming months, and we will likely see this again, but that's
Okay.
has to be determined at a future date.
Okay. Go ahead.
So this means that we're gonna continue it and then we'll come back, it'll come back to us to vote on?
I think you should ask the maker of the motion.
Well, yes, what I'm meaning by that, I'm taking staff's recommendation that we take no action. We've heard from the public, there is reports that are still coming. So we're not required to take an action. In fact, in the public expression, we're not allowed to act on that, what we heard today anyway.
Right.
All right, so
No, that's
I'm
not true.
recommending
This is an agendized item.
this part, the
It- it-
presentation we received?
That's part of,
Okay.
that's part of the action item.
I see the consideration, right, but is it part of today's input? that we
Yes,
received?
yes, it
Okay,
is.
Thank you. So to clarify, I'm still recommending that we take staff's recommendation of no action pending
Okay.
further
So
information.
you're going with the recommendation of the staff of what's written down here?
Of the recommendation at the bottom.
Yeah, it's
of
on
the
the second
Mr.
page.
Dow's report,
Page 3.
page 3, action required, none. I'm looking forward to seeing more information being produced as time goes on, and this item can be re-agendized between now and April at any time.
I'm still seconding that.
Okay, right. Well, we have motion and second, and let's call roll.
Okay, Scalmini,
Yes.
Stransky,
No?
Ignacio,
Yes.
Chimolino,
Yes.
Ranachek,
Yes.
Krosky,
Yes.
Jackman.
I'm still not clear as to, we're voting to take no action. Is it, we're voting to support the staff recommendation?
Yes.
Yes. Aye.
And Judy.
Yes. So,
Staff will keep the board informed when we hear more. And you may determine to put it on a future agenda.
okay, we've been going for nearly 2 hours and want to take a 5-minute break before our next item.
Can I make a point of clarification since my report came up in this discussion for the record?
We're in a break. Send us a letter.
Oops, sorry. My trouble is I was a public works manager.
35, we'd like to resume the Mendocino Council of Governments meeting. And we do have requests to make the next couple items brief if possible. And so next item is our next and final regular item is report and review of Covelo State Route 162 Corridor Multipurpose Trail Project to prepare for upcoming action to complete the environmental component.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, thank you for indulging that. And I told you it was going to be an unusual meeting. This next item is also unusual, and that's why we're talking about it today. We are involved in the implementation of a project in Covelo, something that we don't normally do, but for circumstances we can talk about later if you want to hear. We get involved doing it, but it's a necessary project. Somebody had to do it, and we're doing it. And James Sickney, who has experience as a project manager, is the manager of the project, and we have some real deadlines coming up. And those of you who have been on the board know that if there's something important coming up, I don't want to spring it on you by sending out an agenda item, hey, we're going to take action on this. If I know it's coming, I want to tell you a couple months ahead of time, even more if I can, what we would like to have you to do at the December meeting. With that, I'll hand this over to James Sickney. He wrote the staff report, and I told him if he does any talking to follow my lead. I'm a naturally slow talker, and he is naturally 3 times as fast as I am.
Good afternoon. For those of you that aren't familiar with this project or the work that we've done in Covelo in the past, in 2014, the board adopted a non-motorized needs assessment and feasibility study. And the top priorities from that study were a multi-purpose trail coming out of town, going to the north along 162, leading past the health center and up to tribal headquarters, as well as the east-west component from 162 to Henderson. For those of you who aren't familiar with Covelo, I could provide you with a map if you'd like. Pretty much just north-south and east-west. So following that, about 3 months later, staff, well, Phil, wrote a grant application through the Active Transportation Program from CalTrans, and he was awarded some funding through that for the environmental and design phases for phase 1. In the original study, this trail was broken up into 2 segments, phase 1 going from Howard to Bigger, and then including the east-west component, and then from Bigger up to Hurt. It was split up because in the second phase, there's a bridge, and so for financial reasons, they thought it would be, they being the consultant, thought it would be better to split it up rather than have one large project. A year later, 2015, we submitted 2 more applications, one to finish the design and construction for phase 1, and then all funding for phase 2. We were successful in those as well. And then, let's see, in May of last year, we went into contract with a consultant to do the environmental right-of-way and design work. And we are approaching the end of the environmental work. We have a deadline to allocate design money coming up here in December. And so in order to get that, we have to have the environmental document approved by the board. And coincidentally, there's a 3-day gap in between. And so in December, I will be bringing the environmental document back to you guys. We are expecting a mitigated negative declaration. There are a few things, specifically wetlands, that we're going to mitigate for. And I believe we already have a potential site to do that on. I won't know until I see the draft, which should be out in a couple weeks. Once that's out, we're going to have a public meeting up in Covelo to make sure that the community has access to it so they can comment. We'll provide the board with it as well so that you guys can see it ahead of time. And I think I probably spoke a little too fast, but that's about it. Do you guys have any questions?
Just when will we see the actual environmental document or whatever you call it there?
The draft?
Yeah, the draft.
So the draft should be done. Last I spoke to the consultant, they were finishing up the archaeological work because there's a lot of that up there. And they were waiting for one final report from their subconsultant, and they expect it to be done. I'm hoping next week. I will be out of town though, so I won't know until the following week, but we should expect it, I think, the third week of October.
Okay, so
Soon.
I assume we'll get it soon thereafter, that time before the
Yeah,
December
we-
meeting.
yeah,
We'll
we-
go
yeah.
through it.
We
Yeah,
can forward that environmental document early as soon as we have it, if you'd like to see it.
It has to go out for a 30-day comment period
Yeah.
anyway. And so as soon as I get it, I'll give it to the board, as well as all the stakeholders that I have contact information for up in Covelo.
That was all my only concern there.
Okay, Director Grosky.
Thank you. One, will you just make sure that you let me know when your public meetings are there, just so that as supervisor for there, I can come up to those meetings?
Yeah, I was already planning on it.
Okay,
So.
thank you. And then the other comment I had, and I think, Phil, you probably got this same email I did. I'd met with CalTrans and discussed with them some of the concerns that Covelo residents had brought to me with regards to traffic calming, and some of their ideas. So CalTrans had sent me an email with that they were considering putting a bike path in, which was originally part of this this proposal. So I just didn't know, is that a modification that's just including ours, or is that totally separate from this?
Is this the recent email?
Yes, came out
That-
Friday, I think.
Yes,
Just-
that is something quite separate.
Okay.
It is consistent to have those bikeways painted on, they're doing a rehabilitation on the state highway, I think from, East Lane to the south to the grocery store, essentially. And they asked me if I had any concerns about, and I haven't responded to them yet, about painting those bike lanes, and that would be consistent with the overall plan that we did for that community several years ago.
Okay.
But that is a separate project, and it would actually tie into the separate Class 1 path that we're planning on building.
Okay, wonderful. He just had talked in his email about it being part of the project that you guys had wanted. I think his was extending those a little bit farther, as far as, so from East Road.
To the south.
Right. So anyhow, I was just curious how those tied in, because he talked about already being part of the project, so I wouldn't know.
Well, it's not part of the
Okay.
project.
It's just a good tie-in.
It is complementary to
Great.
to the rehabilitation project, and it complements our plan. It
Perfect.
fits in perfectly.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Any members of the public, questions or comments on this report? Any?
Just want to let you know, because we'll need action in December to stay on schedule. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thanks.
I know there's other things here left.
But that does conclude our regular, action items. But we are in regular item, but now we're on to consent calendar, which is approval of the August 21st minutes and adoption of resolution 2017 approving the allocation of California Proposition 1B funds and from years 15-16 and 16-17 for transit system safety, security, and disaster response account for Mendocino Transit Agency's eligible projects. Do we have a motion to on the consent?
Excuse me, really quick. Sorry. We're going to be having an amendment to the minutes,
Okay.
just a small amendment regarding Rex Jackman being on the phone instead of in person. It wasn't clarified in the minutes, so there's going to be a small amendment to that. That's about it. I wanted to do that before you made a motion.
Great. So with
I'll
that,
make a motion to approve this consent calendar with the noted amendment to the minutes.
second to the motion?
I second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any comments on the consent motion, on the motion? Okay, well, we're all present, so I think we could just
Roll call.
do the money while roll call,
Yeah.
okay.
for the resolution.
Scalamini?
I'm sorry, clarify what this, where we are
This
right
is
now?
the consent calendar.
Consent calendar.
Just the consent calendar, okay. Aye.
Do we have a number for that resolution?
Yes, it's
11 and 12.
M 2017, 11 and 12. Okay, Scalamini?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Ignacio?
Yes.
Chimilino?
Yes.
Ranachek?
Yes.
Krosky?
Yes.
Jackman?
Yes.
And Yurdi?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, now we recess as the Policy Advisory Committee and reconvene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency. Do we have a motion to ratify the action of the Advisory Committee?
So moved.
Okay. Any
I'll second.
Okay. And I think with this, we just, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, not seeing any. Now we're on to reports. First one off is Mendocino Transit Agency Authority.
Hi, directors. I'm afraid I'm going to be a little boring after this morning, but I am here. I'll just be really, really brief because I know you've had a really long day. We are really doing well. We are really streamlining our finance and our HR divisions. And we're moving more rapidly than I even thought was possible, converting over into a new modern accounting system instead of Lotus 123, if anyone of you even remembers that. I have the floppy. You do? Okay. So we've also convened our route committee, which is primarily made up of drivers, which is something that over the next 6 to 8 months, they're going to be, matter of fact, we're meeting next Saturday. We meet once a month, and we're reviewing every single route that we have. And we're doing it route by route by route. Then we're going to come back and review all of the recommendations against the actual ridership numbers and really look at, are we going where we need to be going and where are we not going that we should be? And the best people that know that are the people that are driving the buses. So we've got a really good mix across the board, and that's been going really well. Route match that you approved for us on our last round of safety and security, I have even better news. When I first approached this group, I estimated that it would pay for itself in 2 years. I was wrong. Since it has come up and become operational, we have gone from 4 buses a day to 2 on our dial-a-ride with decreased wait times. And when you look at the end of the data entry and how it's going to export right into our new cost accounting modules and finance and all that manual, on the 10 key going away, probably 1 year and it's going to have paid for itself. So thank you again. That's about the latest and greatest at MTA. Any questions?
Just one comment. Did you say for dial ride you went from 4 to 2?
Yes.
And dial ride, if I know public transit is the most expensive to operate?
Correct.
I want to get that point across to the board.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I'll see you in a month.
Thank you.
North Coast Rail Authority, do we have any updates from them?
Loretta's not here today, and I know nothing.
Well, I think we have seen some activity over.
Pardon me?
We've seen some activity on the property off of Perkins, and so we all know that there's some cleanup activity going on.
Oh, for the courthouse site, yeah, there is a small bridge being put in for continuity from across Hospital Drive through that property to access that area. And in full disclosure, my brother-in-law has the contract to build the bridge. He also built Confusion Hill, so it's no small operation.
Okay, then we're on to MCOG staff summary of meetings, which we do have in our packet. Anything you want to highlight?
Yes, under number 1, Senate Bill 1 implementation. You wouldn't believe the amount of meetings there have been on every one of these programs, and I have been involved in 5 of those programs, and so it's been pretty tough, back and forth between Sacramento and LA and everywhere else they want to have one. But I want to point out the local partnership First, we have 3 entities in this county. Just for a little bit of background, and our chair remembers this. Back around the turn of the century, we were looking at the possibility of going self-help, and it never really made it to the full board to consider a county-wide sales tax for transportation. Richard Shoemaker was, I think, the chairman of the board at the time. And he said, I don't know, everything happens at the board is a 3-2. So unless you get full support, you're probably not going to go anywhere. At the same time, because of the way that I had asked the consultant to do the voter opinion surveys, I asked him to do it by entity, and I looked at the numbers, particularly in Willits, and said, look at this, there's high support for doing it on a citywide basis. And then I looked, and Point Arena had high support. Fort Bragg was on the margin, and the county had the least support, the unincorporated area. So, make a long story short, I checked with staff, legislative staff, and they said, well, there's no mechanism for cities to run just a transportation tax or any type of tax citywide on a majority, a 2/3 vote as a tax. So Virginia Strom Martin at the time was our representative, and we got a hold of her and had her sponsor legislation that just applied to the cities in Lake and Mendocino County. Because I thought if it get any bigger than that, might get a lot of attention and may not go anywhere, and it went right through. So immediately, Gordon Logan was the city manager. He said, well, let's run that thing if we got that good of numbers, and they did, and Point Arena did too. And within months they passed a 2/3 majority of half-cent sales tax just for transportation, and then I think a few months later Fort Bragg ran one, and so we had 3 over 4 cities. Later on, 2-3 years later, Nevada County did 2 of their cities pass sales taxes, and then just last November, city of Clear Lake and Lake County finally, after 4 tries, passed one. So what they did under Senate Bill 1 was they have a considerable pot of money, $200 million, that was highly influenced by the self-help counties that make billions of dollars a year off of this, as a reward and incentive for local agencies to have transportation sales taxes, because take care of their own streets and roads, and in the big entities it's to do major improvements to provide for growth. But for us, our sales job was for just rehabilitation and maintenance, because everybody knows the condition the county roads and city streets has deteriorated quite a bit in the last 20 years. So the motivation was that, and so when this pot came around, they put together a committee, and pretty quickly they decided there's going to be $200 million a year going into this, and somewhere in some meeting that I wasn't aware of, it was decided, well, we're going to put $100 million a year will be for a competitive program, of which we have very low hope, competing with LA County and San Diego and Fresno and MTC down in the Bay Area. All we want to do is fix our streets. So I'm not putting a lot of hope in that, but the other half was going to be a formula program that would be going as a reward for all those who have done the effort and run their own campaign and passed a sales tax. That's where I get involved, and I looked around, and the only ones were in Lake County and Mendocino and Nevada County, and my good friend in Nevada County, he was doing other things, so he gave me his proxy. So what they intended to do was say, well, what's the fair way of dividing up this money to the, to these entities who have passed it? So they decided fairly early on that, well, we're going to do you get half of your money based on your population. That ought to make you start worrying right there. Then the other half of the money is based on the amount of money you generate compared to everybody else and how much they generate. That ought to make you worry even more. So my argument from the very beginning was, and I said this publicly, I'm here for crumbs, but I want big crumbs. And I said, we're not going to compete. And thankfully, the one of the CTC staff members ran the numbers, and he picked out the city of Clear Lake, and he demonstrated, well, based on their population and how much they generate, it was going to be like a few $100s a year. And I had already stated, I think what you ought to do is give us a threshold amount, and then maybe so much for population and so much for on top of that. But give us enough money they can at least do a project with. And I told them that I can remember 20-some years ago, and some statewide program came out, and each city got a share. I remember sending the city of Point Arena $14. And I told them that, and I said, give us something they can work with. Give us a real reward. And in my mind, we had to keep the whole thing under $1 million because less than 1%, and it would otherwise it would attract some kind of attention. So staff came up, and I had it in my mind, okay, $75,000 a piece would be great. But CTC staff, and I had all my arguments. I already done enough calculations. I knew what to do, what to say. CTC staff said, well, let's just give these small cities $100,000 a year. And so I was just sitting there, and they came around to me, well, what do you think? And I said, that's reasonable. I looked all the way around the room, and the representative from LA County was right next to me. She whispers, are you okay with that? And I said, yeah, Patricia, I'm okay with that. And all these big agencies are around me, and they understood, and they didn't raise an eyebrow. So I thought it was fine, and it is something. And Point Arena, their city manager thinks it's a bonanza.
He sure
does. Huh? But anyway, I was happy with that because it's enough to do something with and consider our competition. So that's part of the news. I've also been attending the trade corridor enhancement programs, keeping an eye on that. I can't say I'm representing one of several representing rural areas, making sure they don't forget about the rural areas. And what it is goods movement and highway improvements mainly, not really rail around here, but or ports. But I've been attending those, keeping an eye on it, and I was on my way back from one of those meetings thinking, well, here's one of those things that I'm there for the good of the order, because really the two most important improvements that would help trade corridors, truck traffic, are really not in this county. They are the widening of Highway 29 in Lake County, and I don't want to get involved in a big issue again, but really Richardson Grove, that little widening job to allow STAA trucks in Richardson Grove, which by taking down a few small trees is entangled in a lawsuit. So, and I don't know what the status of that is, but after the bypass, and getting all those trucks off the city streets and the idling diesels, we don't have a developed trade corridor project. But if Senate Bill 1 survives challenges and is going to be part of the program in the years. I'm sure that we could take advantage of that when we have to widen Highway 101, the 2-lane sections between here and Hopland. That's a trade corridor. So in the future, we may get something out of it as well. That concludes my report. I tell you, there's just been one meeting after another for 3 months all over the state.
Well, good job on the local match, local partnership funds. So if I remember correctly, the city Point Arena's sales tax annually generates about $50,000. So this is a 2-for-1 match.
Oh.
Point Arena will have the best roads in the county very soon. 5 years. 5 years.
Yeah, and the draft guidelines we discussed at the meeting on the 25th, and I told them that the guidelines require a 1-to-1 match, and I said, I have a city here that doesn't generate 100,000 a year, so the final guidelines will reflect you have to have a 50% match. Everybody was kind of laughing about that. All right, it applies to one person. Fine. So yeah, I was happy with this.
And I don't remember the exact figures for Willits. Maybe 600,000 a year is probably about
More, 6 to 7, I think.
Yeah, and Fort Bragg around 8 or so.
About that.
So it's a good match. Okay, all right. So now we're on.
Of course, Ukiah missed their opportunity.
Okay.
They went the easy route. The next one?
Well, we have administrative miscellaneous. Is there any miscellaneous?
No, number 2.
Oh.
California Mobility Investment Opportunities. Did I write a staff report on that? Okay, I wrote a staff report and I'll be quiet. I did it so long I can't remember. But this was kind of an initiative of the California Transportation Commission, it was aimed at influencing the legislature by showing them all the things that could be done if we had that extra tax, and then it was kind of stalled, and the California Transportation Commission repurposed it and put it out like, here are our opportunities to invest, and I just took parts of it out of the final report, and you'll note that we had to have an array of different types of project, and you'll notice in there one of the things that could be done is the Garcia River Bridge. I picked that one representing this county because it would be a high-profile thing, and that's what they were looking for. And it does not imply that no improvements to either the county road system on the approach to that new bridge or the city street on the approach to the bridge would not also be part of the improvement. That was for his. He left. That's it.
Okay. Anything on miscellaneous? No. Okay, so then
It's 4 o'clock. Nothing.
MCOG planning staff. Any sustainable communities grant?
What's that?
Just that one verbal report Loretta would have done if she were here.
What is the verbal report Loretta would have? Oh, the sustainable community grants. We are planning on doing an application, which would do. I'm trying to switch gears here, which would provide us funding to hire a consultant to do countywide, excluding Point Arena, countywide a pedestrian feasibility study because of this new, well, it's not so new anymore, but enhanced funding under the Active Transportation Program. Provide us an engineered feasibility study that would look at gaps in pedestrian features such as sidewalks and things in different communities around the county, and look at what the whole range is, then then prioritize those, and on a prioritized list in different parts of the county, both the unincorporated and the cities, get a manageable list, do engineered feasibility to give us some project planning level cost of those, and then we would have a kind of a document that where we can automatically apply for these active transportation plans each year in the cycle, because $100 million more has been put into that program through Senate Bill 1, which increases the program by about 70%. And so there's going to be more funding available. We want to be prepared to have entities be able to have the information to put together an application which we can help them on and be competitive. Now, you'll notice I said we excluded Point Arena. That's because they got $100,000 a year. No, it's because we're going to accommodate that through our work program. We're going to start off because the city manager he said, when are you going to be ready to go with this stuff? And I said, well, we got to get through the process and apply for a grant, but we're going to then do them separately through the work program. And they'll be the first ones.
Okay. Any miscellaneous planning staff reports?
It's 4:03.
Okay. Okay, director reports. Any director reports? Not seeing any. CSAC, CalCOG, I don't think there's any reports there. Then leads us to adjournment at 4:04. I guess we're adjourned.
What was that?
Done.
Done.